As voting begins for Koreans living outside the country, the presidential candidates are appealing to them directly. Key pledges include making it easier for this group to access services in Korea, exercise their right to vote, and deal with government agencies more easily from abroad. Shi-hoo fills us in.
Overseas voting began on February 23rd and will continue until the 28th. For some 226,000 eligible voters outside of South Korea, presidential candidates have come up with platforms and campaigns that are specifically for those who are overseas. All four major candidates have promised to establish a one-stop center for the various needs of overseas Koreans who until now have had to deal with a myriad of different agencies for taxes, consular affairs, education, and more. Such a center would be set up under the Framework Act on Overseas Koreans, which exists in draft form. Its passage has been pledged by candidates Lee Jae-myung of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea, Yoon Suk-yeol of the main opposition People Power Party, and Shim Sang-jung of the minor Progressive Justice Party. Candidate An Chol-soo of the People's Party said he would establish a one-stop center too, but would first set up a presidential committee. But they've not yet proposed specifics. That's led to questions because similar plans were promised in the last election but were never brought to fruition. The heads of overseas Korean groups have said that they would like to have an organization under the office of the Prime Minister. Lee Jae-myung of the Democratic Party appealed to overseas voters Tuesday in a video on social media.
As president, I will overcome the difficulties of COVID-19 and make our country one of the top 5 economies in the world. I will create a South Korea that you can feel prouder of.
He also promised to pass the Framework Act, expand their voting opportunities, boost education for them, support their resettlement in Korea, and better protect Korea's cultural heritage abroad. The same day, overseas voters were addressed in a video from the People Power Party featuring an AI version of its candidate Yoon Suk-yeol.
I'm AI Yoon Suk-yeol. The Yoon Suk-yeol administration will work together with overseas Koreans for South Korea's global future. For another energetic day, let's go.
He promised more support for Koreans doing business overseas and for the participation of overseas voters, as well as more opportunities for them to learn, work, and invest in Korea, and to strengthen ties with Koreans who've been adopted abroad. The Justice Party's Shim Sang-jung, meanwhile, shared on social media her concerns about Koreans in Ukraine. She also said that overseas Koreans have been at the forefront of change in South Korea and that the country needs a kind of politics that will overcome the climate crisis, inequality, and discrimination. Shim also promised to pass the Framework Act on Overseas Koreans and to revise the Immigration Act. In terms of voting, she pledged to expand ballot access through postal voting and by supporting educational institutions. The candidate of the People's Party, An Chol-soo, said that South Korea's place in the world will depend on who becomes the next president. He said overseas Koreans are civilian diplomats and proud national assets, and he pledged to work to improve and support their rights. An promised to set up a rapid crisis response system, expand embassy call centers, and establish a system enabling overseas Koreans to contact the Korean police who can reach out on their behalf to the police in the country where they live. Shi-hoo, Arirang News.